Well, good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 297 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where Aragorn is still out there healing folks.
Well, I'm sure the Gondorian health and safety folks will mandate a break for him shortly.
I hope so.
Folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I'm Sara Brown, Shield Maiden of Rohan, and I'm here with the man of the West who can't live long on the heights, Alan Sisto.
Quite true. Love first what you're fitted to love. It's what I've always said. Folks, join us as we welcome a few of our patrons to join us for our 23rd quarterly Questions After Nightfall.
Folks, some of you are hearing this show for the very first time, so to you, we bid a warm welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony podcast, we are reading, talking, and often joking our way through Middle-earth a few pages at a time.
We take a deep dive into the lore, explore how the story came to be, talk about our favorite themes, and a whole lot more. But once a quarter, we take a break from our read-through and welcome a few of our patrons to join us here in the common room and bring along some of their very best questions.
We have no idea what they're going to ask us, so, as we've done so many times before, we're simply going to do the best job we can in answering their questions with whatever we have in our brains and on our shelves. And I'm hoping I've got more on my shelves than I have in my brain.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I have to rely solely on my brain and not on the electronic shelves, we are in trouble. Now, as with previous Questions After Nightfall episodes, aside from any edits for nervous coughs and time spent flipping through pages as we look for an answer, we will be presenting this as it was recorded live. So everything that you hear in this show will have been recorded during this session.
So no pressure. If you'd like to be on one of these with us sometime, join the fellowship of the podcast at patreon.com/prancingponypod. Questions After Nightfall episodes are recorded once a quarter, and patrons at the Elrond's honorarium tier and higher are invited to join.
It's just one of the ways we show our appreciation to those who support the show, giving them the opportunity to join us, make us laugh, make us think, and more than occasionally embarrass us in the best possible way, of course. Now, let's go ahead and get started. Sara, who is up first today?
Up first is the lovely Demay.
Demay, welcome.
Hello, everyone. This is Demay in Alaska, where finally the snow is almost all melted. Yes, it is late spring.
And the days are getting long.
Yes, we have no darkness now, so it's...
None?
None,
wow.
Yeah.
Already? It's only May.
Yeah, we're pretty far north where I am, so we take advantage of it, let me tell you.
I bet you do.
Yeah, but it was really late breakup. Ice running in the river, the tourist boats trying to avoid them and not becoming the Titanic and all that good stuff.
The tiny Titanics, yes. We don't want that in your river.
No Titanics.
None at all.
Well, I have one that actually I just read some additional information on yesterday. The Embracer Group, which I believe is some Scandinavian company, has purchased the Middle-earth Enterprise rights.
Yes.
And the most recent news is that Amazon's gaming department, I didn't know they had a gaming department, is planning on creating some sort of game. And that got me to thinking, now that they have these, I know they have the film rights, and apparently they have other kind of rights, like gaming rights. And so my question for you and Sara are, what story or stories would you want to see in the future, assuming that other people can meet the bids that the Embracer Group has for this property?
Ooh.
Very good question.
Goodness.
Well, yeah, I mean, Embracer Group did purchase, just to kind of confirm what you've said and provide a little more detail for listeners, Embracer Group did purchase the rights from Middle-earth Enterprises. They actually purchased Middle-earth Enterprises as an entity because they're the rights holder. And eventually, I'm sure that will change in terms of corporate structure, but that's the way it works right now. And as a result, that means they have the licensing that Middle-earth Enterprises, the Saul Zaentz Corporation, had before. So all the games, all the merchandise, all the film rights go through Embracer Group. So now Amazon, yeah, they apparently worked out. Amazon came to them and must have made a heck of a deal, because now Amazon has announced that they are in the very early stages of developing a MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing game set in Middle-earth. That's all we know about it. Obviously, I'm going to be wanting to know how that affects Lotro's license with Standing Stone Games and you know, whether that's going to impact that in the future. But for now, we don't know anything in that front. As to your question, what are the stories we'd like to see? Oh my, Sarah, I'm going to let you start with that as I begin to ponder some things.
See, I'm assuming that even though they've got all of these rights, they still haven't got the rights to things like the Silmarillion.
No.
Right?
No. Correct. This is Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is such a shame because I would actually love to see some of the stories from the Silmarillion.
I know.
I mean, that would just be wonderful. Like the Great Tales, for example, being adapted would be fantastic. But alas, it is not to be. So,
alas.
Thinking about what they do have the rights to, they've got the rights to everything in the appendices, right?
Right. And that's exactly where I'm thinking some great material.
There is some really, really interesting stuff in the appendices that it would be great to see a little bit more of. I mean, for example, the whole story of Aragorn being in Rohan and Minas Tirith long before
you were exactly thinking the same story I was. That's the story of Thorongil.
Right. The Thorongil story. Yes. So, the story of Aragorn from birth through to becoming the man we see at the start of The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great story, actually.
That would be fantastic. You could do that over a series of films, sort of a la, the Marvel universe sort of deal. And you could have, a film of him in Rohan helping out Thengel and dealing with that. And the next film next two films could be in Gondor where he's taking out the Corsairs, and you could follow him into the east where the stars are strange, and he couldn't meet the two blue wizards because we can't name them or do anything about them. They're in Unfinished Tales. But
yeah, they got seriously close to dropping that in the Hobbit films, didn't they?
They sure did. Yeah, Gandalf's like, oh, I don't remember their names.
Yes,
it was clever.
I wonder why. Yeah. But yes, they can't meet or talk about the blue wizards specifically, I think, because I don't think the rights to that is being handed over.
Yeah, I think Aragorn, the young Aragorn story about Thorongil would be a fantastic story. I know that a lot of the tales in the appendices get fleshed out more in other sources, and that's the case with the story that I want to see, which is the tale of Cirion and Eorl. Obviously, we can't get the full version that's told in Unfinished Tales. But the story itself, the very basic outline of it, is mentioned in the appendices and would be, just so cool. The problem is you can't get to all the detail. You can't get Elendil's tomb. You can't get the amazing oath spoken in Quenya by Cirion, but it would be just fantastic. So that would be another story. Obviously, Aragorn and Arwen is going to be a wonderful tale that they would tell, I'm sure. Demay.
I was thinking I would like to know more about Eowyn and how she learned to wield the sword and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like that should be under the Middle-earth Enterprises purview, as one would say.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to fill in the gaps because we don't really have a great deal, do we?
No.
All we know about her younger days is the fact that she's orphaned at a relatively early age and then is, I was going to say fostered, but I suppose is cared for by her uncle Theoden. So we don't get a huge amount. So, if they're willing to fill in the gaps, then perhaps we could get that story.
Or what about Eowyn afterwards? You'd be filling in the gaps completely, but I want to see the Eowyn Faramir wedding. I want to see them in Ithilien doing their thing over there, and that would be a beautiful story. It
would, yes.
Fantastic stuff. Other stories that are actually in there, because, of course, the Faramir Eowyn story doesn't have enough. They'd have to make it all up. So what stories in the appendices could they touch on that would be interesting? How about the Gondorian Civil War? I mean, it's an unpleasant thing, but what a tale that would be to go with the whole idea of sending your son to the north to build this alliance. He falls in love with a northern woman. He marries her. It causes this strife. You've got this sort of racial tension. You've got the usurper, and then they end up becoming the Corsairs. Just a incredible political, historical. I mean, just you could really do a lot with that. It could go very dark too. It is a civil war.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many possibilities of things that they could take just from the appendices. I think that would be so fruitful for years.
The initial defeat of the Witch King in the northern after Fornost and the prophecy of Glorfindel. Oh, man.
Yes. Yeah.
So many good tales. Yeah, I hope that they start to show some imagination and dive into these lesser known stories. That would certainly be exciting. I have a feeling we won't see as much of that as we might like. I think studios are a little afraid to do anything that's not proven. They made the investment to buy these rights in order to make good money, to
Right.
pay themselves back for buying the rights. So they're going to make what sells.
Yeah. And of course, I think Amazon is probably still weighing up the response to Rings of Power.
Oh, yeah.
Which has been everything from, yay, wonderful, to utterly vitriolic.
Yeah.
Some people do seem to have made a hobby out of yelling on Twitter about the Rings of Power. So I think that they may consider the ways in which that has had response so far, and it depends, I suppose, on whether they're going to be brave and go for it, or if they're going to play it safe and do something that's totally extant in the text.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we know the showrunners have already developed the main storyline. They already know how they're going to end the show in 4 more seasons. And so unless they're going to radically change how they get there, I suspect they already have whatever their plan is in place. I do hope they clean up some of the things that are lore contrary, if you will.
Lore adjacent.
Lore adjacent? Lore in the next state over, but yes.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that Amazon have already got their story pretty much laid out. I'm thinking about these new stories that might be told as to whether they might be a little bit more wary of just how they fill in the gaps, as it were.
Well, I guess we'll see how the War of the Rohirrim goes next year, right? That's a story where they're filling in a lot of blanks. That's the animated film that's going to be looking at early Rohan with Helm Hammerhand. It should be a fantastic story. But how that goes is going to be a guideline for how the Embracer Group moves forward, I suspect, with these other tales.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. Of course, Embracer Group is primarily a games company. They consist of several games companies in Scandinavia, mostly in Sweden, I believe. And it's no surprise that one of the first projects out of the gate is a game project. I think we saw that, immediately with the Gollum game, and now we've got, the news about this Amazon game. So it's, in a way, I'm kind of excited because as a gamer myself, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do in Middle-earth. I think that's a fun place where really interesting stories can be told, but at the same time, it's also a place where really crazy, wacky stories can be told. If anybody remembers Shadow of Mordor, whichever one it is, where you've got like sexy Shelob and Isildur and Helm Hammerhand as Nazgul. It's just a little off the rails there, but it's a place to experiment. That's for sure.
As someone who isn't a gamer at all, I'm not 100% interested in what kind of games they come out with. I know there will be plenty of people who are.
And that's the thing. People will come to the fandom one way or the other. I've talked to a number of people whose foray into Tolkien actually came through The Lord of the Rings Online.
Yes.
And, just like people will come to it through the Amazon series or through a different adaptation. So.
Yep. No, whatever is the gateway drug to Tolkien, I'm totally on board with people doing that. Absolutely.
Fully has my support. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Get you to the books one way or the other. Well, great question, Demay. Thank you very much. Sara, who is next up?
That would be Jerry.
Jerry, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here again.
Good to have you back, sir.
Okay, so I was going through the Silmarillion a while ago and was at the part where the Balrogs appeared to rescue Morgoth from his little lover's quarrel with Ungoliant.
That terrible, no good, awful first date, yes.
Exactly.
So it wasn't a sexy Ungoliant then?
No, it was definitely not a sexy Ungoliant, yeah.
So at that point, I was wondering what would be a good collective noun for Balrogs. Now, to me, a good or fun collective noun is descriptive of an aspect of the creature, either physically or behaviorally, such as a huddle of walruses, a crash of rhinos, an armory of aardvarks, a basque of crocodiles, or a dazzle of zebras. So what do you think would be good collective nouns for creatures or even non-human peoples of Middle-earth?
Well, I can tell you one that wouldn't work for me. We'll start there. It sure as heck is not. It's not a flock of Balrogs.
A flock.
Because they don't have wings, right? They don't have wings. I'm still dying on that hill.
Then I think that we also cannot call them a wing of Balrogs.
So a plummet of Balrogs, that would be very, very good.
It should be alliterative, I believe. And we've had that comment in the chat here. Sarah says it needs to be alliterative. And coming from the Prancing Pony podcast and today's Tolkien Times, I can tell you it has to be alliterative. So let's go with a batch of Balrogs. No.
I don't think that conveys their darkness. A battalion of Balrogs.
A battalion, a Balrog battalion. That could work. A blossom of Balrogs. A Balrog bomb. A blight. A blight of Balrogs.
A blight of Balrogs. I love that.
A blight of Balrogs. It's not going to be a Bovril of Balrogs.
That's a bit of a shame, actually.
Goodness, so many good words that we could use. Of course, you know, I love the examples you came up with, Jerry. And of course, the first thing that came to my mind was a murder of crows, you know, as a great collective noun.
I love the fact that one crow in its own has to be attempted murder.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That is a good question. I like that. I'm going to be processing that in the back of my mind, Jerry, the rest of the episode as I'm answering other questions and thinking things. I've got about 5% of my CPU dedicated to thinking through possible collective nouns for Balrogs, maybe thinking outside of the box, outside of that alliterative box. Because a box of Balrogs is just boring.
Well, Jerry is suggesting a pinata of Feanors, but I would go for a pinata of Celebrimbors, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. Or a pincushion of Celebrimbors, actually. Yeah. Well, thankfully, Feanor is not a plural, and there is only one.
Oh, yes.
And so we don't have to worry about a collective noun. We have to worry about a collective noun for his children, the offspring of Feanor. But,
yes.
Fascinating question, though. I like that. And Jerry, you asked some really fun questions, I have to say. That's a good one. I like that. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get some more questions for you folks, but right after the break. Now, before we get back to our patrons and their questions, we want to make sure you know that even after you've listened to this episode, there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions, not just here, but all across our social media spaces. So check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
On Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast. Follow the page to get the news, but be sure to join the group for some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/PrancingPonyPod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at PrancingPonyPod.
And the PPP is also finally on TikTok at Prancing Pony Pod, so follow me there as well. And finally, my all-new daily podcast, Today's Tolkien Times, is out and available wherever podcasts are found. It's also a short-form video podcast on YouTube. Every day features something different, from Mailbag Mondays to Word Nerd Wednesdays and Silmarillion Saturdays. So join me on this new adventure and follow at Tolkien Times on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And you can find me on Facebook at Today's Tolkien Times. For now, though, it is time to head back to the common room for some more questions. Sarah, who's up next?
That would be Ian.
Ian, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name's Ian. I'm from foggy San Francisco.
Foggy San Francisco. Because sunny San Francisco doesn't exist more than, about 4 days out of the year?
Not at all. I'm relatively new to the podcast, so I apologize if this question has come up.
No, that's
before.
all right.
I was talking with my wife about Legolas the other day, and we were kind of confused why in Elrond's great wisdom and foresight and in Gandalf's wisdom and Aragorn's potentially, why they choose him to be part of the Nine Walkers. I could see other perspectives wise. I know there's like a narrative construct that makes sense, but just from the perspective of these characters.
Right. What's the in-universe reason for it?
Right, exactly.
When Glorfindel is right there.
Right. And I was also thinking, like, wouldn't they pick a trusted advisor within Elrond's house to go, but they pick Legolas, the strange
one of
elf.
Elrond's sons, maybe, or something like that. I mean, instead they picked, the son of the king of the Woodland Realm. That's a good question. What's the in-universe reason for choosing Legolas over the other available elves to represent the elves? Sarah, do you have any thoughts on this?
Goodness me, I didn't have before that question was asked because I hadn't actually considered it, but that is really interesting. I suppose there's a number of potential reasons. You want a representative of the elves to go with, but maybe you don't want to send Glorfindel because you want to hold on to him. I mean, he's rather special, right?
Yeah, that is true.
And you do have to actually defend Rivendell against all of these potential outside forces. I mean, what if they don't actually get the ring destroyed? Then what? Because Sauron's going to come after Lothlorien, he's going to come after Rivendell. And maybe you want a great general like Glorfindel held back for the just in case moment. So that's a
fair.
possibility. Also, Legolas is right there and volunteering.
Oh, well, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of holding Glorfindel back makes sense. I mean, he is ace up the sleeve, so to speak, right? He's your trump card, the most powerful elf you've got there. You probably don't want to use him in this scenario. But yeah, it is interesting that instead of choosing, well, let me think. Let's go to the actual passage. Chapter 3, The Ring Goes South in Book 2. And Elrond says, I will choose you companions to go with you as far as they will or fortune allows. The number must be few, since your hope is in speed and secrecy. And I think there's another reason why they don't send Glorfindel.
He's a bit glowy,
big,
isn't
bright,
he?
Yeah, he's going to definitely grab some attention. As Elrond says, had I a host of elves in armor of the elder days, it would avail little save to arouse the power of Mordor. So then he decides, just pulls a number out of his hat. The company of the ring shall be 9. The 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. So a little symbolism. He wants a small group. It makes sense to go with 9. He's already chosen Frodo, Sam, and then Gandalf because it's his great task and maybe the end of his labors. Then he says, for the rest, they shall represent the other free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men. And for some reason, he picks Legolas shall be for the elves and Gimli for the dwarves. They are willing to go at least to the passes of the mountain. So that may be part of it. He may have off screen, so to speak, asked who would be willing to go at least as far as, point X. That's, of course, when Elrond then adds Aragorn, and then we go from there. Elrond does initially think about sending some trusted people from his household, right? He says, there remain 2 more to be found. These I will consider. Of my household, I may find some that it seems good to me to send. You almost want to think that he would have sent his 2 sons instead of Pippin and Merry. That's really who I would have imagined him doing. But clearly, Legolas's willingness to leave Rivendell, because he's not from there, makes him perhaps a more ideal target. Certainly low profile, like you talked about, not the high-end target that Glorfindel would have been. It's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's not forget that Legolas is a prince.
He is.
Right? He's not just nobody.
He's not just some guy. He's not just a red shirt elf. Right.
Right. Exactly.
He's not poor Haldir who's just doomed to die on the parapet somewhere. Yeah. I know.
Yes, let's not go into that. But yes, so he is actually a somebody. He is Legolas of the woodland realm. He is the son of Thranduil. So he is somebody relatively important amongst his people, setting him alongside somebody like Boromir, who is a sort of prince of his people, right? And then you've also got Aragorn, who's definitely somebody rather important.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so he ends up allowing Merry and Pippin to go, although he would rather send them back to the Shire.
Yeah, especially Pippin. He says he really has hesitations about sending the younger one.
Right.
Interestingly, Tom has a comment in the chat that I want to bring up that I think really might actually play into this. He says it's Legolas's punishment. Now, maybe that's the wrong word, but I think there's some responsibility here for letting Gollum escape, which really ticked off Aragorn. Well, actually, there might be something to be said for this. The Woodland Realm was responsible for Gollum's safekeeping. They let him go. Having a representative from that realm be involved in this quest, maybe again, punishment is
it kind of makes up for it a little bit.
But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like an appropriate responsibility.
I mean, the way in which Legolas reveals their oops.
Oh man, that was hilarious.
Yeah, it's all about, so this Gollum, so
about
whoops.
that.
Yeah. He kind of escaped. Sorry?
We were being nice to him. We let him go up in a tree. And Gollum's like, what? You let him out? We were in those stupid dungeons of your father for a long time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you couldn't hold on to a golem for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, there could be something to that. There could be. I think maybe it's a combination of, hey, you know what, you guys, we're responsible for Gollum and you let him go. We need an elf, right? We want somebody who goes for the elves. It can't be Glorfindel, and we're not going to send one of the sons without the other. So who do we send? Legolas is willing to go, so he goes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously the narrative reason, as Ian said, exists separately, right? This idea that the friendship specifically between Legolas and Gimli is one of those really, really key storylines that Tolkien wanted to get across, and does, because of who Legolas is in many ways. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
And perhaps if Elrond had sent Elladan and Elrohir, then maybe Legolas would have just buddied up with them, and you wouldn't have got that
right
strange opposites attract oil and water combination.
Exactly. He's the only
Gimli
elf there, so
right.
Now he's got to connect with somebody, and for some reason it ends up being that short guy. I love that relationship.
It's not a pairing you would think of from the very beginning, but
no,
it seems to work for them.
Very much the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love that. Great question, Ian. Thank you for that one. Sara, who's up next?
It's the marvelous Marilyn.
Marvelous Marilyn. All right.
Thank you, Sara. Thanks, Alan. Hi, everybody. Interesting that Glorfindel was just mentioned, because my question stems from Gandalf's description of him as having great power in the visible and invisible worlds.
Mm-hmm.
I've often seen the parallel, in a sense, between elves' fate on Middle-earth and the Ringwraiths. They diminish. Their bodily essence is eaten up, if you will, in one case by Fey, in the other case by rings.
Mm-hmm.
What are these visible and invisible worlds? Where do we see them? Why is it good for the elves and not so great for the Ringwraiths?
I can answer that second one first, I think, and it has to do with the nature of their being. The Ringwraiths are, of course, mortal men, and their whole purpose in existence on Arda, I shouldn't say purpose in existence, but their whole nature of existence in Arda is to eventually leave it, right? I mean, that's the gift of death to men, the gift of Iluvatar, that they get to leave the world, that they're not bound to it forever, for as long as it exists. And that's why it's not good for them. Now, the question as to why it's good for the elves is a different question. I'm not quite sure how to address that. Sara, do you have any thoughts maybe to start?
So, as you started saying there, Alan, you've got a very different attitude to mortality, immortality coming from the elves and the men because of the way in which they are set up, if you like, by Iluvatar in the very beginning. So it is made clear by Iluvatar that the elves are bound to the world, and that means that should their physical form perish, they don't actually die in the same way that mortal men do. All right. So what happens to them? Well, their Fea, their spirit, if you want, still survives. So what happens to that Fea? Okay. Is it just sort of hanging in the air somewhere? There must be like a way in which, this is my headcanon, by the way, a way in which the physical body, the Hroa of the elf, is situated within the seen world. But the Fea travels beyond the solid physical world because it can be put back into a physical body, and the elf can be reborn in a sort of way. I mean, it's difficult to find the best vocabulary for this. So for me, because I've thought long and hard about this, the seen and unseen world before, because I find this absolutely fascinating. The only way I can really explain this, because of course Elrond talks about it's Gandalf who talks about how what Frodo has seen when he saw this great glowing figure in Glorfindel, as he saw Glorfindel as he truly is, because he is on both sides. Now, if this is the same Glorfindel who perished against the Balrog, this is a Glorfindel who has already been through a process of physical death and rebirth. Okay, does this mean, and I think it might, that an elf that has been through this process, that has actually come back into a physical body, into the solid world, if you like, still has, particularly if it's somebody as powerful and as old as Glorfindel, still has the ability to see and even walk in the unseen world where the Fëa will have been for however long. I just think that's possible, that is how that works. And you're right to say that this is not good for the Ringwraiths, because mortal men are not meant to walk in that unseen world. It is not for them.
No.
Men die indeed. What happens to them, we're not 100% told. It's the great mystery.
Right.
But it is the gift of Ilúvatar that they are not bound to the world in the way that the elves are. And so the men, the mortal men, and it sort of irritates me using the word men when we mean humans, but I know you know what I mean.
Yeah, men with a capital M to speak of the race as opposed to the gender.
Humanity, that they are in possession of the gift of Ilúvatar, and the gift of Ilúvatar, as we know, when the Númenóreans try to take back the gift of Ilúvatar with their gift receipt and say, please, can I exchange this for something else? That this is not okay. That this is not meant, that they are not meant to hand back the gift of Ilúvatar, because you can't.
Exactly.
Nobody can actually subvert the gift of Ilúvatar.
No, even the Valar don't have that power, correct?
Exactly. What Sauron does with the ring, of course, is subverting the gift of Ilúvatar, which makes it even more evil.
Correct.
What happens to the Ringwraiths.
I want to actually take a look at letter 131 for a little bit. I know we always look at 131, but there's something in there that's really very specific to this. And again, it doesn't necessarily get to the seen and unseen world bit, but it does talk a little bit about the difference and again, why it's good for one and not good for the other, talking a little bit about that and the gift. He's explaining about the elves and men, and he says specifically about these two, right? These are the firstborn, the elves, and the followers, men. The doom of the elves is to be immortal, and this is where he explains what their job is to do: to love the beauty of the world, to bring it to full flower with their gifts of delicacy and perfection, to last while it lasts, never leaving it even when slain, but returning. And yet, when the followers come, to teach them and make way for them, to fade as the followers grow and absorb the life from which both proceed. Now, that's interesting, and I'm not sure we get a lot of more information on that. He goes on to point out that the doom or the gift of men is mortality, freedom from the circles of the world. Since the point of view of the whole cycle is the elvish, mortality is not explained mythically. It is a mystery of God of which no more is known than that what God has purposed for men is hidden, a grief and an envy to the immortal elves. But that bit about the followers growing and absorbing the life from which they both proceed is interesting. Now, before we get back to more of the seen and unseen, Marilyn, you've got something you wanted to follow up on.
Yes, I'm just wondering if the Wraith world, unseen, is the same invisible world as the invisible world that Glorfindel inhabits.
I believe so.
Because Glorfindel could step into that unseen world and, do something about those dashed Ringwraiths, right?
In other words, is the unseen the same as sort of the Wraith world? Well, let's look back at that passage. In many meetings, we get the explanation that these particular elves, right, like Glorfindel, the elven wise, the lords of the Eldar from beyond the furthest seas, they do not fear the Ringwraiths, for those who have dwelt in the blessed realm live at once in both worlds, and against both the seen and the unseen they have great power. That certainly suggests that they are inhabiting that realm. Now, wrongly, right? They're not supposed to be there. That's not what their nature is. But the Ringwraiths must be in that realm for that reference, for that quote to really even make any logical sense. If the elven wise are able to live at once in both worlds, and that's tied to the fact they don't fear the Ringwraiths, then it suggests to me that they are, in fact, in there. Trying to remember some of the other things that Tolkien has said specifically about perhaps Wraith world, if we want to identify it as separately. The Blessed Realm is the qualifier, right? It's those who have been in the Blessed Realm now live in both worlds. The Blessed Realm isn't either of the worlds. The Blessed Realm is the place that if an elf comes from there, they therefore have the ability to live at once in both worlds.
Which is only a certain number of the ones that are still around in the Third Age, of course.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Elrond has never dwelt in the Blessed Realm. So we're talking about Galadriel, Glorfindel, Círdan, Gildor, maybe a few others, but not too many.
Not many.
No. And even if Elrond had lived there, he's a half-elven anyway, so I'm not sure. Or he would be counted as an Eldar because he chose that.
Because he chose that, yes.
Yeah. But he was never there, so we don't even have to speculate on it. So if the unseen world is just a place, it is not good or evil any more than the physical realm is good or evil. It is just simply another realm. Then the ability of somebody like Glorfindel to traverse both worlds at the same time gives them power over and then also invulnerability from the fear that the Nazgul might generate perhaps in others. The unseen world, I also have to think about the fact that the Valar could go unclothed and could still traverse the world. So, or not just the Valar, but the Maiar as well, all the Ainur.
Yeah, because Gandalf did that. If you go all the way back, of course, in the early days, he would travel through Middle-earth. Yeah.
Walk unseen. We know that Ose has done that. And so if they're able to traverse it as well, again, it just suggests it's a different dimension, a different plane of existence. And the Nazgul don't belong there, and that's the point, right? They
should not be there at all.
No. And that's only happening because of what the rings have done to them.
Yeah, which of course makes it even more evil because this is Sauron subverting the will of Iluvatar.
Twisting the purpose.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think, we've had this question before about does Gandalf, when he talks about pitying the slaves of Sauron, there's a question in my mind does that include the Ringwraiths? I think it does.
Yes. I think
it absolutely does. These are men who deserved to be able, no matter how evil they were, deserved to leave Arda. And in a way, when the destruction of Barad-dûr happens and the rings are gone, they're free. Now, I would not want to have to be them standing in front of Eru Iluvatar answering for their deeds.
Yes.
But, at least they finally get that release. So really, really good question, Marilyn. Thanks for making us think. All right, Sara. So who's up next?
Oh, next up is Scott.
Oh, all right. Scott, welcome.
Hi, I'm D. Scott.
Hi.
I go by Scott, but, on the internet, there's a lot of Scotts out there. So, and I figure if
that's true.
Being associated with a D like D. May, that's not a bad thing at all.
No, that's actually a very good point. I like that.
Okay, so my question here, I've had to go through and thin out over time here, Alan. I've collected a few since I've actually, unfortunately, missed one or two of these in the past. Jumping into the Second Age. In the Second Age, we have the Eldar initially are, from what I read anyways, people can correct me, are ferrying the Dunedain to Numenor originally. When they are populating the Isle of Gift, they are actually bringing them to Numenor. And then the early years of Numenor, we have the side of the island, and I can't remember the name of the bay over there. Somebody can remember. Where they can get up on the tower and they can see Tol Eressëa out there on clear days. Yeah. So my question is, in the days of Numenor, when they were friends with the elves and Gil-galad is petitioning for help, I'm thinking, why did he not just send Círdan directly to Valinor or to Tol Eressëa? Or why didn't he have a waiting staff there or messenger of some type in Numenor waiting for the visitors who come from Tol Eressëa to relay a message? We could really use some help over here against Sauron, who, by the way, you left after the last battle.
You cleaned up Morgoth, but you left Sauron.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just one of those thoughts that's been going through my head is, why was there not direct communication and direct petition? And I understand them asking the people in Numenor, of course, but it seems to me a gap in there that there wasn't a direct petition, because we know they will get up and move. The Valar will when they need to. However, in this case, you never see any cross communication when to me it would be obvious, because now the way is open again, it seems, in the Second Age. Why didn't it happen?
Right. I mean, you've already come and saved us at the end of the First Age. So, why shouldn't we be able to wave hello and say, hey, could you come back and clean up your mess? I think there's a recognition on the part of Gil-galad that they're just not going to do that. That this was a once in time sort of intervention. And also in doing so, it, changed continents, right? Beleriand was destroyed. I mean, the way is open in that sense, it's still a flat Earth. Earth has not been made spherical at this point, but I'm pretty sure he just knows we're on our own on this, right? This is a problem we have to solve. And he's just, I don't know. What do you think, Sara?
There have been a number of times in the past where emissaries have been sent to Valinor to ask for help. And historically, it's not gone well.
No, you're right. It's historically not gone very well at all. Yeah.
Right.
I'm thinking of poor Varanwe, the only one who made it back from that particular envoy. Yeah.
So, I think that, even though there's been help occasionally in the past, if you think about even the emissaries that we know about from Tolkien's texts that have been sent to ask the Valar for help, and that they have essentially all just sort of disappeared. This is, I think, a message from the Valar that it's not you're on your own, that's it. It's just that you need to work out what to do. This is part of what you are supposed to do in Middle-earth, is when difficulties come, you have to find your way. You can't just dial for mum and get her to come over and sort things out. You actually do have to do your best to work it out for yourself. We're
not helicopter Ainur. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it goes back to something else. Like, why didn't the Eagles take the ring and drop it into the volcano? Well, 1, because there's no story. 2, because Manway's Eagles are not a freaking taxi service.
No, they are not.
Right. And 3, because actually, and this is the most important answer, is because you're supposed to work towards these things yourself.
Exactly.
That sometimes things are hard, but this is part of what being in the world is about. And I think that's one of the reasons why Gil-galad doesn't send emissaries to Valinor, but sends emissaries to what he thinks might be the next best thing, which is to the great mariners of Numenor. And of course, when he sends a letter to Aldarion's father and says, your son is fantastic and wants to help us, and I'm sending you this letter saying, please, can we have some help here? And I think it's because Gil-galad recognizes that here is an opportunity for elves and mortal men to come together to fight against this evil that is encroaching on Middle-earth, and that this is perhaps what is meant to happen, rather than phoning home and seeing if they can send the troops.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. And, certainly the shipwrights of Numenor are a powerful ally and can help them a great deal. But reaching out to the Valar, I think he knows really is pointless. And who's he going to send on that journey? Everybody knows about
who's going to volunteer for that one. It's a one-way journey. Yeah. We don't know if you'll make it
back.
Yeah. If you actually get there, we don't know if you actually survive. You're not supposed to land in Valinor, but hands up, anybody? No volunteers.
All right, everybody step forward and volunteer.
Yeah.
It's a good question, though. I mean, really, why wouldn't you want to call on the most powerful forces available to you? Scott.
Yeah.
You've got a follow-up for us.
I think that's a good tact, and I get that. I guess I was going down a different road in my own mind there, and I was thinking more of a gap in the professor's writings and a lot of his retconning there. And I understand nobody could get there in the first stage. You had the Shadow Islands and all that out there and kept it, but all of a sudden the way was open. And I was looking at it as I thought I just found a gap in his story, basically.
I mean, if the road is open, the road is open, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And even if you want to say, okay, you don't want to go to Valinor because you might have to stay, well, then like I said, you stop in Numenor and wait for the next group to come over and visit and say, hey, could you relay this message? But I appreciate Sarah's take on that as well. And there's a lot to be said about, the interference in the past of the Valar with the elves. And we could have a whole nother discussion on them bringing them over to Valinor as well. But excellent takes. I appreciate it.
No problem. That's a good question. All right, Sara, who do we have up next?
Okay, we have Sara.
Sara, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Well, like Scott, there are a number of Sarahs in the PPP community. So I am Sarah J. from Colorado. We only have one Sara that I know of, and she's excellent. So I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh.
So there are many themes that run through The Lord of the Rings. And many of us have talked about reading the books over a long period of time and seeing different things and responding to different things, noticing things that we hadn't seen before. So my question for you two is, what one or two themes in The Lord of the Rings most deeply resonated with you when you first read the books? And what one or two themes most deeply resonate with you currently?
I like that question. That's a good one, Sarah. Thank you. Oh my, I'm having to take myself back a very long way indeed to the first time that I read The Lord of the Rings. I was, young man, high school, probably 14, maybe 15 by the time I finished it, somewhere in that range. At that point, it was just a really cool story, a really rich world. So I think without knowing what it was that inconsistency of reality. That's not so much a theme as it is a characteristic. But that was one of the things that drew me to Tolkien's writings. I think maybe if I look back at that time, maybe the theme of fellowship and the theme of hope were probably the two things that as a young man were not only the most obvious and, things that we see right away, but were relevant to me at that time in that stage of my life. I think I'd have to go with that. It's hard because I have to go back in time so far to remember that. Thanks a lot for reminding me. No, let me think about the ones for now. Sara, what about you? When you first read The Lord of the Rings, what were the themes that grabbed your attention, that moved you?
Well, I was 8 when I first read The Lord of the Rings, so clearly that's only 10 years ago for a start. So I don't have to look back quite so long as you.
That's only 10 years. I like that.
You don't need to laugh quite so strongly at that. Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much.
Well, if you'd said 20, I wouldn't have even snickered.
Okay. All right. Flattery will get you kind of everywhere, so that's all right. It was friendship. It was just the way in which friends work together to do something big that I remember being something very attractive about the story, that to me, it just seemed all about friendship. But I mean, it's a great question, Sarah, but I don't remember huge amounts of detail from why I thought it was about friendship, because it's an extremely long time ago, actually. But in terms of the theme now that resonates most with me, the one that really holds on to my thoughts, it is the theme of loss. To me, that is the greatest of all the themes in Tolkien's work. Now, there are many, many great themes, pity and all those. Those are really strong themes. For me, it's the whole of the story from the Silmarillion onwards is about loss.
Yeah, especially those first age tales, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's loss of self, loss of world, loss of culture, there's so much loss going on at all times. And that's the all-pervasive sadness. I mean, there's joy as well in Tolkien's world, but to me, there's an undercurrent of sorrow going throughout that is so compelling because we're always saying goodbye to something.
Yeah,
right?
We are.
So that's why that resonates with me most right now.
I like that. That's if I'm looking at the entire Legendarium, I think I'd be hard pressed to say something other than that. Actually, I mean, I think that's why I mentioned, especially those first age tales. I certainly don't want to steal your thunder, so I will move to a different theme. But the theme of loss, that it comes back for me to something that Verlin Flieger taught us early on when we had her, I think at the beginning of the second season, or maybe it was the beginning of the third. And she was sort of helping us understand this from that Beowulf perspective, the idea that defeat is in a way inevitable, that victory is possible, but temporary. And that eventually, you are going to lose everything. That's the nature of things. And I think we see that often enough in The Lord of the Rings that it becomes kind of part of the fiber and it's easy to miss, I think, for people. And I that's a shame because it's such a rich and poignant theme. I was thinking of the moments where people are said never to have come back there again or never to have been seen there again. Right. We just had Denethor.
Came there never again as living man.
Exactly. Aragorn, talking about Caran Amroth, came there never again as living man. Boromir, when he was sent down the Anduin in his boat, of course he's dead, so he's not going to be seen very many places. But right, he was not seen again in Minas Tirith, standing as he used to stand upon the White Tower. Bilbo never being seen again in Hobbiton. And all of these kinds of moments where there's a loss that's not just of that person, but of those moments or of that sense of place or of that particular kind of mix of characters or character and place like Bilbo and Hobbiton. It's very rich. And that's a good one. I would be hard pressed to say that's not one of the most moving. For me, I think the things that draw me now are the opposites. Things like fate and free will, that debate, that constant idea, that tension, I should say, not debate, as well as death and immortality, these antitheses. Because, again, going back to Dr. Flieger, Tolkien was a man of antitheses. He really liked to set these things up in opposition to one another on the surface, but together, not really in opposition. I mean, even death and immortality, they are not opposed. They are just different aspects of the nature of these created beings. And it's the same thing with fate and free will. Well, do you have fate or free will? Yes. I mean, there's a sense of both. And he does that so masterfully that those are the themes that really resonate with me. I'm going to cheat and say hope and despair too. And just the whole concept of antitheses. So there you go. Good question, though.
Just to add to that, one of the things I really enjoy about books like The Lord of the Rings is that Tolkien tells us a tale both on a macro and a micro level.
Yeah.
So we get the story of how evil is trying to swamp the entire world and everything could descend into darkness, etc., etc. And so you've got these enormous armies that are coming together and these great battles. And meanwhile, you've got this little dude running a pub, Barliman running his pub and just getting on with his life. And there's little people, by little I don't necessarily mean hobbity, I mean just ordinary people getting on with their lives. Farmer Maggot just carrying on running his farm and Barliman serving his beer. I like the fact that we have people, this is their place, this is who they are, this is what they do. It's the small lives that we all have, right? We all have our own little life that we live, but we're all affected by the big things that happen as well. I like the fact that Tolkien shows us both, because even though Barliman pulls pints and runs a pub, he's still aware of bigger things going on around him that worry him. And I think that resonates because that's all of us, right?
Yeah.
We have our little lives, but we're all aware of the big things that really affect us.
And that's something that Tolkien does exceptionally well. You're right. This, from the huge metaphysical concepts and thoughts to, like you said, Barliman or Farmer Maggot or just, people in Minas Tirith doing their thing. Yorith, just doing her thing,
My woman
helping
Yorith.
people out and remembering old tales, just moving on with their lives. But yeah, man, fantastic. Great question. Thanks for making us think, Sarah. That's a really good one. I like that. Sarah, who is up next? Here in the first round, at least.
That would be Connor.
Connor, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Great.
My understanding is that Tolkien was against the notion of breaking a thing to understand its beauty. How might he have viewed the Asian practice of breaking pottery and then reassembling it with gold? Would he view it the same way, or might he see that as an artist creating a micro spabimi with his or her work?
You're talking about kintsugi, right?
Thank you. I'm glad you know that because I don't actually know this practice.
It's beautiful. Connor's obviously aware as well, but as far as I know, it's an ancient practice whereby, if you drop a vase, then you stick it in the bin because that vase is now trashed, right? But instead of doing that, what they would do is they would put those broken pieces together and they would bind it with a cement-like substance that contained gold.
Oh, okay.
So what you would then have is the pottery would be made whole again, but made beautiful in a different way because you can see where the cracks were, but those cracks are now made glorious.
Yeah, they're highlighted. Your attention is actually drawn to them.
Yes. So instead of trying to hide the cracks, you're actually showing how the cracks are now part of this vase as it is now. It may be different, but it is equally beautiful.
Yeah.
If not more so, because we can celebrate the fact that it may have been broken once, but now look at how stunning it is as a whole. So that's the practice of kintsugi.
And arguably maybe stronger even where those cracks are. Would those be less likely to, if it were to fall again, for instance?
It would break in different places.
It would break in different places. The seam where the gold would be and that sort of cement would have held it together.
Right. Yeah. It celebrates imperfection rather than just looking for perfection and throwing away that which is not what you deem perfect. Knowing that, I don't think that Tolkien would have seen it as breaking a thing in the same way that he has Gandalf criticize Saruman for breaking, for breaking a thing to find out, what's in it. Basically, this isn't a. It sounds like the process of breaking the vase. I'm assuming it's done unintentionally. Maybe it's just it's fallen. Let's fix it with this gold. Let's do this thing rather than okay, I've made a vase. Now I'm going to break it on purpose and make this art piece. Either way, you're still not breaking it to find its contents. You're either creating art intentionally or you're strengthening and rebuilding something, which that to me is actually very Tolkien-esque, right? To take a thing that is now less than what it could have been, less than what it was, and make it stronger, more beautiful, more vibrant, and yet not to pretend the bad thing didn't happen. I mean, I'm thinking of all the suffering and all the hard things that have made up, let's say, Frodo's life, for instance. By the time we get to the end, he's very much a broken vase, and yet he's going to be made whole again. Those flaws will still be there in a sense that is memory. They're always going to be part of who he is, but they're not going to be weak points anymore for him. When he gets to the Undying Lands, however long he gets to be there. And we know that as a mortal, he will fade more quickly, but he's going to be there long enough to be healed and experience that. So yeah, I would think that Tolkien would look quite kindly on that. What do you think? I agree. I think that where Tolkien is talking about Saruman being utterly wrong in the idea of breaking a thing to find out how it works is something separate to the idea of a thing is broken, but it can be made beautiful again. I think those are two different thoughts, actually. I think Tolkien would have rather liked kintsugi. I love the fact you brought up Frodo there. I see Frodo as being almost a piece that has been made whole again. Look at the wonderful moments where Sam looks at his sleeping face and he sees this beautiful old face, but it's one that has peace in it, showing the possibilities of how Frodo could be once all this is over. I mean, I think it's a great question, because I think what we can do is we can look at the ways in which Tolkien has actually used things literally as, okay, this was broken, but now it is remade. I see somebody in the chat has actually mentioned Anduril.
Yeah, Anduril Narsil, right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the shards of Narsil. This sword was once great. It's now broken. What are we going to do? Do we throw it away? No, because it's actually a really important sword. So what do? We reforge the sword. Yeah. That sword is not weak because it is now being put back together. It's actually put back together and it is incredibly strong and more meaningful, perhaps, because it has been reforged, because it got broken in the middle of a great deed, if you like. So it was important. So actually, I think it's a lovely question to ask, but I think it helps us delineate between reforging that which is broken and making it strong and beautiful, and deliberately smashing something apart so you can work out what its purpose is.
Yeah. Yeah, because one is purely mechanistic, right? Yeah. One is just trying to, I think of the machine, right? I mean, the machine is another one of the themes of Tolkien, one of the main themes that he says the story is about. And it's never in a good sense, is it?
No.
It's very much machine versus nature. And this does not feel like breaking something to find out what it consists of or what you can do with it. Right, to find some other purpose. Well, let me find something better. Yeah,
lovely question though.
And how fascinating! I did not know about this practice, so I appreciate learning something new. I love that.
Oh, have a look on Google Images.
Oh, I just did. When you gave me the name of it, I immediately pulled it up and was like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah. I love it. All right, Sara, I think that only leaves one, right? Who's left?
It does. Last, but absolutely definitely not least, and that is Tom.
Ah, Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Sara. It's really nice to be here. I'm Tom. I've been here before. I've been with the Prancing Pony a long time, since the elder days when we still had the light of Amman in our faces. I live in Brooklyn. So I was just thinking this morning, when I was thinking, okay, what am I going to ask these folks? And it occurred to me that there are 3 moments in The Lord of the Rings where you go from having an overground journey to an underground journey. Okay. So the first one, of course, is they try to go over Caradhras, the mountain or Sauron or Caradhra or just the weather stops them. They go underground. It turns out really badly. It works out eventually, but for the moment, to start with, and for all appearances, at first it turns out really badly. Mm-hmm. Then you have Frodo and Sam going up, climbing almost to the top of the Mountains of Shadow in order to go underground and go through a tunnel. And that turns out really badly. Not as badly as it could have, and it does work out in the end. And then the third one, which is kind of interesting because given the way the books work, you start with Frodo's journey underground in Shelob's lair, but then that's interrupted by the end of the book. And then you go to the next one before coming back to that. And the next one is Aragorn and the Grey Company going up into the mountains to go through the mountains. And that, however, turns out beautifully. And then, of course, you later on go back to finish up the story of Frodo and Sam's journey through Cirith Ungol. I just thought that was an interesting group of things, and I'm not entirely sure what to think about it because I just really put all 3 of them together this morning and said, that's interesting. Wonder what this tells us. So I wonder what this tells us. What do you guys think?
Well, that is an interesting question, Tom. Sara, the duty of the co-host is to begin answering a question while Alan thinks of his answer.
What do you have is for us? That what the duty of the co-host is? I've been wondering. I've just been kind of fluffing my way through most of the time. Okay.
Basically, pull my butt out of the fire, will you?
I will have a go at this really interesting question, Tom. I think, and again, this is just what I think each one of those times of going up and then going under is a trial for the main person involved. So going underground in Moria, it's Gandalf's trial as much as anything. He must pass through fire. Mm-hmm. Okay, trial by fire, I suppose. But he must pass through fire and then through darkness and everything else. And he comes out the other side stronger. There is a purpose behind that fall that then brings him back to Middle-earth more powerful than he was before. But it is a trial he must pass through. When it comes to Shelob's lair, again, it is a trial. Frodo has to pass through death. It is he doesn't actually die, but it's a close run thing. And it's a real trial for him. And when he comes through that, it's not that he's made more powerful, but the suffering here is it's all a part of Frodo's trial, the trials that he endures and endures and endures right up to that last moment, that is meant to imbue in the reader this sense of great pity for Frodo. And it's an awful thing for him. And it doesn't stop being awful until, he ends up at the fields of Cormallen. But having gone through all of those trials, he is then allowed and able to pass over the water and to gain something greater, if you like, to heal outside of this world. For Aragorn, this is his trial, going through the paths of the dead. Here is where he truly proves who he is. We know who he is, but here he's now proving it to the world. He can command the armies of the dead because of who he is. He doesn't have to wave his sword around like in Peter Jackson's film. There is a recognition here immediately. as to who he is. But he's got to pass through the paths of the dead, which we know from Gimli's response to them are really terrifying.
Utterly terrifying. Right. Exactly. Psychological torture for,
exactly.
Such a long period of time that Gimli can't even conceive of how long it has been since
Right.
he's been in these caves. And Aragorn has to go all the way through them before he can have that conversation at the Stone of Erech, calling the dead to follow him.
Right. But of course, coming out the other side of that, he shows everybody who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Only Aragorn could command the paths of the dead. Now, I don't have any kind of easy answer for you. Oh, this is what this means, and this is what this means, and this is what this means, and this is just how I read this going up and then going under and coming through. It seems to me that going underground always seems to involve a trial of some kind. I don't know. Can I pass it back to Tom because it looks like he wants to respond?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the same thing. Tom, follow up.
Yeah, it's definitely, that sort of thing is definitely a trial, kind of a rite of passage, going all the way back to, the ancient world, Odysseus in the underworld, Orpheus in the underworld, Aeneas in the underworld. But another thing that I was thinking of is in each place, they meet a different kind of evil. In Moria, they meet the kind of evil that tries to dominate the world. And in Cirith Ungol, they meet the kind of evil that is, in a sense, the antithesis of Tom Bombadil. His good, because his good has got nothing to do with mastery or domination. He's got no interest in any of that stuff. And that's why the ring has no effect on him.
Right.
Shelob is his evil antithesis.
Yeah.
Right?
She could care less about
the ring. She
ring.
has no interest in dominating or the
None.
ring or power. She just wants to eat the world.
Hunger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hunger. Of all the things that happen in Shelob's lair, Frodo and nor Sam, no one thinks about the ring. Even the ring is driven from their mind in there. So there's this other kind of evil there. And then, of course, in the Paths of the Dead, you have this kind of evil, which is like men, when they die, are supposed to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These guys, however it works, Isildur's curse, don't. And that's profoundly unnatural.
Yes.
And I think maybe Aragorn can command them because he is the man who accepts the gift and is willing to give it back.
That's an interesting one.
Anyway, that's just something to throw in there as well as the trial.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
This is an interesting one. I'm going to have to spend even more time because now I'm also thinking about other brief underground cave type things. You mentioned Tom Bombadil, and that put me in mind of the Barrow Wight and the very brief underground journey there for the hobbits in dealing with him. And then in a way, there's another journey, you mentioned up into a mountain and then into a cave. There's one at the very end. And that's, up Mount Doom and into the cracks of Doom, into the Samath Naur, and how that is really the ultimate trial. It's the one that, as Tolkien has pointed out and has acknowledged in his letters, Frodo did fail, but he never could have done anything else.
Right.
He got further than anybody else could have. Anybody else who was stronger would have succumbed to the ring and its temptation to power. Anybody weaker wouldn't have even gotten that far to begin with. So, but yeah, there are so many of these moments where you climb to then descend, because even the Barrows, you're up on the top of the hill and their backs are against the stone before they find themselves underground. This is really an interesting set of things to consider.
Yeah, yeah. Even going back to The Hobbit, of course, you've got the dwarves and Bilbo going through the mountains, and then you've got Riddles in the Dark, haven't you? Bilbo's trial.
That's very much Bilbo's trial. You're right. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some classic hero's journey stuff, like you mentioned, Tom, going all the way back even to the classics, into the underworld. Certainly not a new concept in literature, but to consider this in terms of the type of evil that they face, the type of trial, and for whom those trials are. You mentioned Frodo. It's also in a way Sam's trial, almost an equal way. Certainly not in an equal way in terms of facing death, but in the sense that he had to do the thing that he never wanted to have to do. He was going to have to leave Frodo behind, and then he found that he couldn't do that. But really challenging question, as if I expected anything else. Sara, we have a little bit of time left. I think we probably have enough time for 2 or 3 if they're quick questions. So we'll go ahead and start with Marilyn.
Yes. If you could tell the story of Lord of the Rings through the eyes of one of the women or female characters, Other than Éowyn and Galadriel, who would you pick, and what would she say? And what would you want to hear from her?
Ooh, that is a fantastic question. I would pick Rosie Cotton.
You're stealing my answers again, Sara.
Me too.
Yeah. I would pick Rosie Cotton.
Rosie.
Yeah. Because she could tell that tale as somebody who hears about it, but can also give a really good insight into what it's like to be the one left behind and what it's like to then see the home that you know be invaded and having to deal with all of that. And then also because she would be on the outside looking in at how Sam and Frodo are when they return. I think that would be, I just think it would be interesting to hear all of this. It's so easy to dismiss Rose because she does on the surface seem like, oh, okay, we need to marry Sam off. And I know we haven't mentioned her for this entire time of the journey, but here's Rose Cotton. Off you pop, get married and have multiple children. Poor Rosie. But that would be my choice. Okay.
That actually would have been my choice. So now I'm going to have to say somebody like Yorith, but I don't know if we have room for a 27-volume tale of the Lord of the Rings. She would tell quite the story with more digressions, which I suppose really does endear her to my heart in that regard, because she would go off on all the tangents and come back and where was I again? And it would just be a fantastic version of the tale.
Man of the West, never known to digress.
I think, I really would actually enjoy it from her perspective, but there are some others that are Arwen comes to mind. I think hearing her version of the tale, because she would be able to put it in the context of a much longer history, right? Mm-hmm. She knows, she's been around for a very long time. And I think it would be really interesting to see from her perspective the rise of this young Aragorn and her decision to choose to love a mortal alone would be interesting to hear. But then also to know that she's got to be aware they're not going to be able to marry unless he's successful on this quest to, defeat Sauron and become the king of Gondor and Arnor reunited. It's very much you know what? You can have my daughter, but you got to go get a Silmaril for Morgoth's crown sort of thing, except that Elrond doesn't actually want Aragorn to die, unlike Thingol. I think seeing it from her perspective would be really, really interesting because of that historical view. But it would turn it into a very different story. I think the thing about The Lord of the Rings that we like, that we relate to, is because it is told from that less knowledgeable perspective. It is told from an almost human perspective. And as a result, we sort of find ourselves ennobled along with the characters. Arwen's already noble. She's already high. And we would lose that sort of humanity and that touch that I think we get as it stands right now, and as it would continue to be if Rose were to be the perspective. Maybe Lobelia then. She'd have a fight on her hands.
Yeah, Lobelia is awesome, actually. She really is.
I love that her arc comes redemptive. It's fantastic. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah, there's a wonderful piece of scholarship by Amy Ament Radig, Redefining Lobelia or Refining Lobelia, something like that, where she actually does a whole deep dive into why Lobelia Sackville Baggins is actually awesome. I love it.
That's great. Well, that was a good question. Thank you.
It was a great question.
I believe Ian was second up here in the second round, so fire away.
Thanks. I now feel very silly with this next question after that beautiful one.
Oh, no, we love silly questions. Trust me.
Silly questions are good. Yeah.
I got postseason basketball on the mind. And
all right.
And since being a child of the 90s, this brilliant film called Space Jam is in the head right now, too. So if the Goon Squad from Space Jam comes over the Lonely Mountain and challenges Thorne and company, who would be your starting five?
Out of Thorne and company? Well, yeah. I guess we better pick Gandalf because somebody's got to be able to actually have some height on this team. Oh, goodness. Who's my starter? Gandalf at starting center. Bilbo, point guard. Filling out the rest of that starting lineup is going to be tough. I think I'm going to put Bomber at power forward because ain't nobody going to root him out of the box. He's going to get all the rebounds. That leaves the shooting guard. I'm sorry, the shooting guard and the small forward. So let's go with maybe a rotation of Feely and Keely at the 2 guard. And then we're going to put Dwalin in at the small forward position. And we're going to have to run a triangle here because we're going to have to absolutely rely on ball movement because Gandalf's the only height on this team. We are playing small ball here today. And poor Sarah's over there going, what?
Everything you said for the last 5 minutes, it might as well have been in ancient Sumerian. I haven't a clue about, I'm sorry, I haven't a clue about basketball. So that's the first thing.
Okay.
No clue about basketball. I know zero about sports. I've never seen Space Jam. And oh my goodness, child of the 90s, you are so young, my sweet summer child.
Sweet summer child came to mind as well. Yeah.
So
that
one was definitely that's just yours there, Alan. I haven't a clue. So I'm aware I have contributed exactly nothing to the answer of that question.
And that is perfectly fine. That was a fun question, though, Ian. I do appreciate it. And because it was answered with relative haste, we actually have time for another one or two at this point. So I think, who did we say was next up in this second round? It was Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Sarah, what do you have for us?
Speculation time.
Oh, fun.
So I want you to discuss the East Road. A portion of this road, at least in the Third Age, runs through the Shire. And in the Shadow of the Past, at the beginning of the Fellowship, it says dwarves had always used it on their way to the mines in the Blue Mountain.
Right.
But that now there were dwarves on it in unusual numbers. Might you talk about the history of the road and then speculate how much it was used by the dwarves in the Third Age? It seems to me that if lots of dwarves used it consistently, then the hobbits wouldn't persistently have thought of the dwarves as outlandish, as they're described in A Long Expected Party.
Oh, my. Well, Sarah, I'm going to toss this to you to start just because...
This is my shocked and amazed face, by the way.
Well, I took the last one. I could have had you. I could have handed you the basketball
You
question.
took the basketball one, and you're wanting kudos for that.
No, I'm just wanting you to take this one.
I'll
Oh, goodness. Speculation on the East Road. All right, fine. I'll start.
Okay.
So,
okay. I would have, but, I'll let you go first.
all right. Well, we know, I mean, historically, of course, it was a road that was originally most likely built by the dwarves way back in the First Age. It would have run from the Iron Hills to Moria, then, Khazad-dûm, and then across to the Blue Mountains. So it would have connected the Dwarven Kingdom. So it's an old, old road. Now, here in the Third Age, of course, it would have fallen primarily under the purview of Arnor. So that would have been who maintained this road, as well as the bridges and all of the infrastructure associated with it. I do believe that it served actually as the boundary between Cardolan and Rhudaur after the split of the North Kingdom. See, I'm just coming up with the history stuff. I can't do the speculation. I don't know.
I could speculate on why the hobbits still thought of the dwarves as being outlandish, and that's because even if they had seen dwarves, we know that they've also seen big folk, and they still think they're outlandish. The hobbits think anybody that isn't them is outlandish.
I remember, to most of the hobbits of the Shire, the ones in Buckland are outlandish.
Exactly, where folks are queer. So, so...
Hobbits are very parochial.
Yeah, whether you're used to seeing them or not, they can still be foreign, queer, weird, not you.
Exactly, other. Yeah. We see that especially we don't see it so much in Bilbo and Frodo because of their more, shall we say, sort of worldly experience. But Sam and some of the hobbits that he chats with in the pub, for instance, have very, very parochial views about others. We see it a little bit to some extent with Farmer Maggot, even though he's described as, being pretty exceptional for a hobbit. So, yeah, that's a very good point. I think no matter how often they've seen them, they would still be outlandish. But what in the world was causing there to be an increased number of dwarves? That's a very good question, speculating on that. What's bringing the dwarves to the Blue Mountains? Assuming that's where they're going. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of other places for them to go. They're not going to the Grey Havens. Círdan's not saying, well, I want to take a ship. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, what we're missing is a whole load of dwarves to send across the water.
Can you imagine that boat arriving in Valinor? We're here. We're here to mine things for you.
Yeah. And they've suddenly come from Devon, but okay.
I don't know. I'm just making up an accent. Sarah, you've got a follow-up.
Pirate dwarves suddenly.
Well, I happened to look at the section this morning, and it says that there were, I forget the exact word, something like dwarves from strange countries or strange areas coming up from this, fleeing something or getting away from terrors in the south, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were also a lot of men fleeing from the south as well. We encountered that in Bree. So where the Greenway crossed that east road, which is where Bree is located, we see a lot of that, and the Southerners, and I think there's speculation that there may even be some half-orcs among them, that they've come up from the south. That, of course, sounds to me like Saruman's doing. Where would they be coming from if they were coming up the road from the south? They're certainly not fleeing Moria. Those guys are all dead.
Mm-hmm. Long dead.
Yeah. I don't know. It's another one of those mysteries of Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. That's my easy answer, right? It's like Tom Bombadil. It's just an enigma, except that it's an enigma, and we
wrapped in a mystery. Yeah.
That's right. Surrounded by a riddle.
Yep.
Well, I think if we have a short, simple question, we have time for one more. So does anybody want to throw one last question our way?
Oh, that would be Tom.
Okay. At the Council of Elrond, Aragorn tells how he captures Gollum. Aragorn says, "He bit me, and I fear I was not gentle." I have always assumed that "I fear I was not gentle" meant he beat the crap out of him.
That's probably a safe bet.
Now, so how badly did Aragorn beat the crap out of him is my question. Was it just like the back of his hand, or did he really slap him around? That's all.
Oh, that's a great question.
That's a brilliant question.
Oh, goodness.
I like to think Aragorn is too good a person to literally beat the crap out of Gollum.
He's not the type to fall into a rage, an uncontrollable rage.
But, if you've got Gollum sinking his teeth into you, then you're going to give him a bit of a slap to get him off you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then perhaps pin him and tie his hands together or slap a gag on that mouth or something.
I didn't bring my muzzle, so we're just going to have to improvise and find something to keep you from biting me. Yeah, I think it's, Sarah's really hit it on the head. Aragorn's not the type to rage and lose control and just, beat Gollum within an inch of his life. Instead, it was just using the minimal force required to accomplish the objective of securing him without suffering too much in the way of injury. And that would actually require not being gentle. Gollum's not going to cooperate. And so there is going to be a level of force required that will certainly not fit into the gentle category. But yeah, I don't see him being outrageously angry and just pummeling Gollum into the ground. Not that I'd blame him if he did, mind you, but I totally would understand. But that's just not Aragorn. Yeah.
No.
Great
He
question.
bit me, so I turned him into pulp. Yeah.
So I broke a few bones. Yeah, I just, he didn't used to look this way. He used to be a really handsome guy. Oh, man.
And that'll teach him.
That will teach him indeed.
That's why he only has 6 teeth.
That's right. That is absolutely
He did have a full mouthful before then.
Knocked them all out. Yeah. Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony podcast. But be sure to come back in 2 weeks. We're off to celebrate the 4th of July. You're not still sore by the whole independence thing, are you, Sarah? Just want to make sure we're okay.
Do you know what? I think you can just keep America all for yourself. I think we've got problems of our own.
Is this one of those situations where if we attempted to return the gift of men, you would not have it?
No. I'd be closing the door and saying, no, it's all yours. Thank you so much. But I think we have enough to deal with ourselves.
Fair enough. But do come back in 2 weeks, folks, when Sean Gunner returns as we argue over who said what in the last debate.
So, folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP, editor Jordan Rannells, Barliman Becca Davis, and our team of research assistants, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
Now, speaking of the website, please be sure to visit us there at theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch, including all the really cool new chapter designs from Megan.
You'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony podcast is first and foremost a podcast about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. The PPP gets a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we thank you for that.
Indeed we do. And we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Lori from Washington, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, and Dylan in Australia.
There's also Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Karen in the UK, Zaksu in Illinois, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, June in Ireland, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, Connor in North Carolina, Erica in Texas, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Roger in Michigan, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, and Maureen from Massachusetts. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed, thank you very much.
Now make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony podcast. Subscribe now through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, your clarifications, refutations, and argumentations about any of our answers tonight to Barlin at theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want a chance to have your actual voice heard, you can send us audio of you asking your question. I guess that's sort of an indirect questions after Nightfall by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Now, please be sure to still email the question to Barleyman. Even though Barleyman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to get through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able.
As always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners, and it's been far too short a time to spend among such an excellent and admirable co-host. Sarah, we're going to miss you.
I'm going to miss you too.
Well, fortunately, we'll have you back when Rings of Power Wrap-Up makes its appearance again. Who knows when that will be, but presumably
I
next
shall
fall.
look forward to that.
It's been a great time. But until next time, folks.
Halvar. Farewell, everybody.